What's up YouTube, WinterGuard here. So we're going to do a build today that I use a lot. It's a chain lightning build but does not require infinity. Stay tuned. So today we're going to get into a build that I tend to use pretty frequently. Sometimes I veer off and do a little fire build of some sort or a cold build, but this is my go-to build. I've been using it since D2R at least launched. I didn't play it much back in the original D2 LOD days, but this has been kind of my go-to build for D2R, and we're going to delve into this a little bit because it's not your standard. And when I say that, I mean most lightning builds eventually veer off into whether you're using Nova with a self-wheeled infinity, or if you're using a lightning chain lightning build and you use a Merc wielded infinity. This does not do that. It's a little bit of a cheaper build and is very effective, so something to think about. It's a little cheaper to do, of course, than infinity. Especially early season, Infinity, of course, is a little more expensive rune-wise. This one relies strictly on a crescent moon, and of course, these days, with the addition of sunders, now it requires a sunder and a crescent moon, but with those two pieces, you could pretty much clear everything. Now, I've done this up to player 5. I haven't done a player 8 clears, but I'm willing to bet that it might be a little slower, but it could still do it fairly effectively. But I've done it with player 5 builds, or player 5 dungeons without any issues. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First thing we're going to do is look at the build. The build itself is nothing fancy. It's going to look like most lightning builds. So let's take a look here. Obviously, you're going to go into lightning, chain lightning, because those synergize each other. Mastery, of course, all maxed. I usually start with a point in static, 1 point here for each for tele and to teleport. Those are pretty standard, but if you look, Charge Bolt and Nova are the synergies for damage. So Charge Bolt is maxed. Nova is almost there. I throw 1 point into T-Storm. I don't tend to use this that much. Most times I forget to even activate it, but some people like to use this for one little extra hit of damage, so feel free to dump a point there. You can probably get away with just a single point, and you'll be good there. And then, of course, I put 1 point warmth because a little bit of regen always helps. And that's pretty much it. That's the build itself. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Okay, let's take a look at the gear. This is where things get a little more interesting, I guess. At this point, D2, pretty much everybody knows what's going on gear-wise. I mean, there's some new people coming in, but this one relies on Crescent Moon. A lot of people that have played around with lightning builds know what Crescent Moon is. This has a minus enemy lightning resistance, which is the key component of this. Nothing else here really matters outside of that, but as you can see, it's fairly inexpensive. Is going to be your highest rune. All you need is a 3-socket sword, and you're good to go. This is the centerpiece of the build, outside, of course, your lightning sunder. These two key components, and you can clear anything. Immunities are no longer a thing with the sunder, of course. With the extra minus lightning resist from the crescent moon, nothing really stays up. Even the ones with the high lightning resist, this little bump here drops it down to where it doesn't really matter. So you're good to go with this. Now, the one thing with lightning, you don't have the standard 105 breakpoint. Lightning or chain lightning require a 117 breakpoint. So it's a little different from all the other builds, so you're going to get a little, not crazy, you're going to get a little different setup when it comes to making the faster cash rate breakpoint. And the problem with the Crescent Moon, of course, is the fact that it has no faster cash rate on it. And this is a big, the weapon slot for faster cash rates is usually a pretty big deal, because you're going to, even with the Oculus or a Spirit or a Hodo, they all have faster cash rates, so you usually hit the breakpoints pretty easy. So you got to be a little different in this respect. So Viper is pretty standard. Spirit's going to be important. The thing with Spirit, you're going to have to get a fairly high roll. I played around until I got my 35. You're going to need probably 30 to 35 to make this work. And then you're going to need an Iraq. Now, this makes this build a little more expensive. Late season, not that big a deal. Early on, Iraq's going to be hard to get. You could probably play around with these. Like, I'm not having to use a faster cash rate ring in one slot because of the Iraq. And I got a really low roll crafted amulet. So these two pieces here, you could potentially make up the difference to get from the Iraq, because your only other option is to go either a 220 circlet. But if you play around with the numbers, you probably don't have to hit 20, or a Griffin. So the helmet slot makes a difference as well. If you could put your hands on a cheap 220, then the FCR kind of falls into place and you're good to go. And also rock the Train gloves for the extra 20 there. So you can play around with the numbers. You got to hit 117. You could potentially switch out the Iraq, but you're going to have to switch out the helmet if you do so. I don't think you could hit it with just amulet and an extra ring. So things to think about. But just remember, 117 is the important number. If you could get to 117, you're gold. So after you're hitting your faster cash rate breakpoint, there's not really anything that you can't clear. And I'm going to jump into a few different places here, and we're going to show how quick you can run through this. You'll also notice in Chaos that even the lightning immune, like Vizier, just goes down, melts immediately. So the lightning immune mobs just aren't a problem. So we're going to jump into that. We're going to do a few runs in different places just to show you how quickly you can clear places with this. None of the terror zones, none of those matter. The only place that gets a little dicey is the fact that it's tough to make up the resists. Let's look at that. So like with the Sunder, of course, your lightning resist is going to be pretty low. Keep that in mind. You probably, like I'm using War Trabs, you could probably switch these out for resist boots. Where else? That's pretty much it, unless you get some nice FCRs. Like this one has a little light resist on it. If you have an FCR ring here, try and find one with light resist. You could do it in the charms, of course. I mostly set this up for Magic Find. That is the one thing with this build. Magic Find is kind of secondary. You're not going to be popping 300, 400, 500 Magic Find with this build. You could potentially get it in charms at some point, but even right now, I am at 241, which is fine. I mean, that's not a bad number to be at, but if you go with an infinity setup on your Merc, of course, you can get up to, I was rocking like 500 with an infinity Merc. So because you can switch out to Tau 3-piece or 4-piece and really get your Magic Find up. So there's some trade-offs with it, but again, overall, it's a cheaper setup than using the Infinity Merc if you're going to go Lightning, or a self-wheeled Infinity if you're going to go Nova. So some things to think about. Let's jump into some gameplay real quick, and I'll show you how this thing runs. And you guys decide for yourself. Like I said, all it takes is an Rune. Well, you can play around with the Iraq. But outside of that, this is a little cheaper build than running an Infinity setup, and it clears pretty fast. So let's take a look at it. as you can see from the compilation, not a ton of areas that you can't farm. I didn't have any issues anywhere. Again, this is all on P1 online, but again, I've tried this up to player 5 with no difficulties. I've run like all the different terror zones in with multiple people in game, no issues at all. But if you want to try something a little different that's not quite as expensive, this build's it's something to think about. You could try it out. Again, it's not a huge investment in gear. One thing I forgot to show at the beginning, just to show that the Merc really doesn't have a ton, like anything crazy. It's rocking Crown of Thieves. I got a Duriel's shell and my Insight. So pretty basic stuff. The Merc is nowhere near overpowering, but all I need him for is the mana from the Insight, and we're good to go. He does, you kill stuff quick enough that he kind of holds his own. He doesn't get into any issues. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like and subscribe. Check my description for stream times, and we will catch you later. Peace. Keep on farming.